If you're a parent getting real help from grandparents, in-laws, or extended family with your kids, you already know something important. Every bit of help that you can get is an absolute gift. And all of that help can also get really complicated really fast because sometimes the people helping with your kids, they don't always parent the way you do. Maybe their boundaries are different. Their discipline is different. Their instincts are different. And even when everybody just means well, that gap can really start creating tension. Hi, I'm Dan Hayden. This is the Positive Legacy Podcast for Christian fathers. The title of this week's episode, When Family Help Starts Undermining Your Parenting. Again, this is the last part. This is part 4 of our series, Leading at Home Under Pressure. And before I go any further, and in case my mother-in-law is listening, I really want to say something clearly. This is not a personal pain point in my own home. My mother-in-law has been great with our kids. And if she has ever disagreed with our parenting, I'll tell you right now, she's never made that an issue. She's never brought that up to us. So I'm not coming to you today from a fresh personal wound, but I am coming to you from coaching because this is one of those issues I've heard from dads often enough to know that it weighs them down, especially dads with toddlers or preschoolers or even elementary age school kids, especially families where both parents work full time. And especially when couples who are deeply grateful for family help, but they're also quietly frustrated by what comes with it. And that's the tension I want to talk about today. Because when family help starts clashing with your parenting, the issue is rarely just one comment or one incident. It's the pressure of feeling like we need help. We really love these people. And this still isn't the way we want. And that can feel, it can feel very loaded. So if this is you, I want you to know right away, you are not ungrateful just because you're noticing that tension. And you're definitely not crazy for feeling the weight of it. The core issue here is simple. Help is not the same thing as alignment. And a lot of families discover that the hard way. A grandparent can be loving, generous, available, and deeply committed to your child, and yet still undermine your parenting without meaning to. They may rescue too quickly, or they may dismiss consequences. They may undermine your parenting with comments like, oh, he's fine, or that, well, look, that's not how we did it, and you turn out just okay. And if that kind of thing happens repeatedly, it does not just create confusion for the child. It also creates pressure for you, the parents. So especially when the child is somewhere between like toddler and middle school age, because at those ages, consistency, it matters a lot. Kids are learning limits. They're learning what happens when they push. They're learning what authority feels like. So when the caregiving adults are sending mixed signals, it's not a small issue. Now, I think one of the reasons this topic gets so emotionally messy is that it hits two things at once: gratitude and authority. You feel gratitude because someone is helping your family in a real way. And you also feel protective because, yeah, look, these are your kids and they're your values. You can create a kind of inner conflict, and that sort of sounds like, hey, if I say something, I'm being ungrateful. If I don't say something, am I just outsourcing my parenting? If I bring this up, am I going to create family drama? That is exactly why this issue weighs dads down, because it's not just about childcare. It's about things like loyalty, hierarchy, family culture, and yeah, sometimes conflict. And if you tend to be conflict avoidant or highly relational or deeply grateful for help, this can get even harder. You may find yourself minimizing things that really do need attention. That's one reason I see dads bring this into coaching. They're not just asking, hey, how do I win this fight with my in-laws? What they're asking is, how do I lead this clearly without blowing up a relationship we actually value? And those are two very different questions, obviously. And um, that last question, it's the right question. So let's start with what matters most. Before you deal with a grandparent or in-law or, any other type of in-law, you have to get aligned with your wife. That comes first, not because she's automatically right, not because you're automatically right, but because divided parents create even more instability than caregivers with whom you may be misaligned. So if you and your wife are not clear together, then the outside tension, it's going to start finding cracks in your marriage. One of you will want to speak up. One of you will just want to let it go. And one of you will feel more loyalty to, that family of origin. And suddenly the issue is not just, hey, is grandma handling discipline? No, it's, are we even on the same team about what matters here? That has to be addressed first. So the first real leadership move is not confronting the caregiver. It's clarifying your parenting values with your wife, clarifying those values that have to exist between husband and wife. What actually matters to you here? What feels off? What is a preference and what is a principle that we need to stand on? Those are the conversations that have to happen behind closed doors first. Because if the two of you are vague, the caregiving situation will just expose that vagueness fast. And if you're hearing this and you're thinking, honestly, we haven't really talked about it at that level. We're mostly just reacting to incidents. That's not unusual. It's also exactly the kind of thing coaching helps with. Moving from reactive frustration to clarity around things like values and alignment. Now, once mom and dad are aligned, then we can talk about the outside relationships. Here's the principle I'd want dads to hold on to. Gratitude does not require silence. You can be thankful and still be clear. You can honor someone's generosity and still say, hey, look, this part just isn't working for us. You can love your in-laws and you can still say, hey, we need consistency here. That matters because a lot of dads get trapped in the false choices. Either say nothing and keep the peace or say something and create a war. Those are not your only options. There is a third path. It's clear, respectful, and values-based communication. That might sound like something, hey, we're really grateful for how much you help the kids. It means a lot to us. And we want to talk about one area where we need more consistency. That opening matters, not because you're trying to butter them up, but because you're just telling the truth. Then you can get specific. Don't get vague. Don't be historical, right? And this is not a character assassination. So be specific. For example, for us, when he throws a fit and immediately gets what he wants, that makes it harder for us to teach him consistency. Another example, hey, for us, when consequences get reversed later, it just creates confusion. For us, we're trying to teach her to calm down before negotiating, not during the meltdown. That kind of language works better than you always undermine us. Look, you're just not listening to us. You're making this impossible. Specificity lowers the defensiveness. It lowers the temperature of those conversations. And it keeps the conversation about parenting choices, not someone's personal worth. And I think that distinction matters a lot in family systems because older generations may hear feedback as disrespect, especially if they sacrificed a lot to help. That does not mean that you avoid the conversation. It means you just have to enter it with care and, utter transparency. It's okay to tell them, hey, please, I don't want you to hear criticism, but this is an observation we have. Here's another important distinction. Not every disagreement is on equal footing. They're not all equally important. Some of the disagreements are preferences and some are based in principle and some are patterns. That's worth sorting out before you walk into any hard conversation. A preference might be, hey, please don't give them too much sugar before dinner. A principle might be, we need you not to shame him when he cries. A pattern might be, every time we set a consequence, it keeps getting softened or undone. Now, notice I didn't say every time we set a consequence, you soften it or you undo it, right? Because that is going to come off as criticism. But again, preference, principle, patterns, those are very different levels of concern. If you treat every preference like it's a principle, people just stop hearing you well. But if you treat every principle like a preference, your parenting just starts dissolving. So part of the wisdom here is knowing which is which. And if you're not sure, ask yourselves, what is this teaching our kid? What if this happens, or continues for the next 6 months? Is this merely inconvenient, or is it actually shaping something we deeply care about? All of those questions help. Another thing I'd say to dads here is this. Do not let resentment do the talking. If this issue has been building for a while, there is a real temptation to store up examples until the eventual conversation, it's going to come out hot, sarcastic, and really just overloaded. And you know as well as I do, those conversations, they never go well. Because then you are not just talking about today's issues. You are dumping accumulated emotional debt into the room. If you need to vent somewhere wise first. Talk to your wife. Process with your coach. Hi, I'm right here. But look, do not confuse built up frustration with clear leadership. The strongest conversations, they usually happen after you've already gotten your emotional static down. That's one reason I so often tell dads to do their own regulating before they try to do family leadership. If you're already flooded, your words may be true and still just completely land terribly. In fact, this is the kind of thing, tends to get you spun up real quickly. And, if that's the case, I would strongly encourage you to grab the 5-minute calm leadership reset. It's a free download. And that's exactly, what I built it for. Moments when pressure is real and you need to come back to clarity before you start talking. You can grab it through the link in my show notes. Now, let's talk about the kid for a minute. Because one of the trickiest parts of this whole situation is that the child may start adapting to the inconsistency in ways that just aren't great. Kids are smart. We know this. If they learn mom says no and grandma says yes, dad enforces it and uncle backs off, or home has rules and daytime has loopholes, like they will start navigating that system accordingly. And, not because they're evil geniuses. It's just because they're kids. I just saw it today with my own kid. My son had a friend over and he said, "Hey, Dad, can I bring the dog in the pool with me?" "Sure, buddy. Bring the dog in the pool with you." And then my wife came home and looked out and said, "Yep, I sure wish he hadn't brought the dog in the pool. He waited till I was gone." So look, that happens even within the construct of my own marriage, right? But again, our kids during times like this, they are learning what works. They are finding those seams, right? And that's why alignment matters so much. If a kid starts experiencing authority as unstable or discipline as negotiable, depending on the adult, that can create more acting out, certainly more confusion, and a little more testing, right? Like the Raptors testing the wires. Okay. So when you address that caregiver misalignment, you are not being controlling. You are protecting coherence for your kid. That's a very different frame. Okay. Quick word from our sponsor, because apparently, as we do every week, we have to pay the bills around here. And if you've listened to the last few episodes, you'll know right away, I am the sponsor. Hey, so if family help has become tension and you know that you need a calmer, clearer plan for how to lead it, I can help. I coach Christian dads who want to stay steady under pressure and lead their homes with more clarity. If that's you, book a coaching session with me through the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back after it. Hey, there's one more thing that I want dads to hear. You do not need to villainize the helper in order to lead the situation. That's critically important. A lot of people helping with kids are doing the best they know how. They may be operating from older instincts or different assumptions or just plain habit. Hey, I know you love her. I know you're trying to help. I know this may feel different than how you would have done it or how you did it. And then follow up with something like, but this is the direction we're trying to go as her parents. That kind of language is strong without being hostile. And the stronger your alignment is with your wife, the easier that kind of conversation becomes. So here's a simple framework I think may help. Align, appreciate, and clarify. Align with your spouse. Appreciate the help honestly. And clarify the parenting value or the boundary that matters. Not once, but consistently. Because one conversation probably may not solve it. If the caregiver has strong instincts of their own, this may take repetition. This does not mean the conversation failed. It means change often takes reinforcement. So here's your challenge for this week. If this issue is real in your life, do not start by talking to the extended family member. Start with your wife. Ask her, hey, where do we actually feel out of alignment with the help we're receiving? What matters most to us in this area? And like I said, talk through whether your concerns are a preference, a principle, or a pattern. That conversation alone may bring more relief than you expect. And if you get that cleared up, then you can decide whether and how a larger conversation needs to happen. If this is you, if family help is also creating family stress and you want a clearer, calmer way to lead it, guess what? I think I can help. Book a coaching session with me through the link in the show notes. That session has one job: to help you get clear on the actual pressure point, the values underneath it, and your next best move. And if it's a fit, I'll also tell you more about my coaching program as a natural next step. You do not have to keep carrying this tension quietly and just hoping that it resolves itself. Because remember, hope, as a good leader once said to me, hope is not a method. So inside my Positive Legacy Academy, my signature coaching program, this is exactly the kind of thing that we work on in real life. How to lead under relational pressure, how to stay aligned with your wife, and how to communicate clearly, without escalating the family drama. You can book that coaching session again through the link in the show notes. Family help can be a real gift, but parenting authority still belongs to you as the mom and dad. As you think about your own situation, where do you need to move from quiet frustration to clear alignment and wise leadership? Until next time, stay rooted in grace, stay steady in mind and spirit, and keep building your positive legacy one intentional moment at a time. Talk again next week.